What do we got?
Well, I have a piece of antique heirloom jewelry that my mother passed along to me. It was the signet ring of the mafia boss, Lucky Luciano.
This used to belong to Lucky Luciano?
That was made for Lucky Luciano. I've had it in hiding for 40 years.
Why would you have it in hiding?
Because this represents his authority. If anybody got possession of this piece, until now, there would have been bloodshed and war within the families. I decided to come to the pawn shop today to sell my ring that belonged to Lucky Luciano, one of the most notorious mafia dons that ever existed. It's a one-of-a-kind piece that has a lot of power and a lot of authority. They're going to want it not for its jewelry value, but because of its history.
So how did your mom get the ring?
There's an individual whose name I cannot use that gave this to my mother. My mother was a woman who did special services for these people because she had their personal confidence. These gentlemen trusted her with things that they couldn't trust anyone else. And she was given it to protect it and to protect them from fighting amongst themselves.
Okay. It'd be pretty interesting if it was his ring. I know he was involved in the killing of Bugsy Siegel. He was associated with Arnold Rothstein, the guy who fixed the 1919 World Series.
He's pretty much credited for making the mob what it is. He took more of a business aspect to it, where he was more like a crime CEO instead of just, you know, a thug. This guy started his first gang in New York when he was like a teenager. But basically, he grew to be the head of the entire Italian mob in the U.S.
If you look at the picture, that's the face of a devil. The rubies are set as the eyes, but there's even the tear. I mean, Luciano was a mobster. He killed people. I've been told by people, there's blood on that piece. Don't bring it here. I don't want to see it.
Okay. You got any paperwork on this?
You won't find any paperwork on it. I've gone to as many archives as I can come up with. I've checked with friends in the FBI. I had a person describe it to me over the phone, having never met me. And he said, oh, you mean that piece with the diamond for the heart and the rubies for the eyes? Guy had never met me before. And I said, you saw it? He goes, yeah, when I was a kid.
Since so many people are interested in mob legends, I think it's worthwhile getting some more info on this thing. If it really did belong to Lucky Luciano, it could be worth some huge money to the right collector. Have an idea what you wanted for it?
Gonna be 6 figures.
Besides buying it for scrap, I'd have to make sure that he actually owned it before I'd pay any more than that. Believe it or not, Las Vegas has a mob museum. I know the curator of it. This is the one guy that would actually know. So let me give him a call. I'll be right back.
Sounds good. If this person can show some way that this piece belonged to Lucky Luciano, I'd be the most fortunate person that ever was.
What's up, John?
The guys usually call me down to the pawn shop when they have a question about some kind of organized crime artifact.
This is it, allegedly the ring of Lucky Luciano.
Wow. Lucky Luciano is a very big deal, organized crime. This guy immigrated from Sicily, grew up in New York City. I mean, he's really the guy who modernized organized crime. When he assumed power, he implemented the commission, a board of directors for these crime families. It was a way in which they could manage territories, resolve disputes, so that they could ultimately make lots more money.
Okay.
He was then imprisoned in 1937, given a 30 to 50-year prison sentence. He spent 10 years in prison. He was then released but deported back to Italy. Really interesting part of the story, the U.S. military turned to the mob to help out during World War II. It was through the mafia that connections were made back in Italy to pave the way for an Allied invasion. And through this cooperation, Lucky Luciano was able to secure his release. If this is Lucky Luciano's ring, you'd be looking at something that would be worth tens of thousands of dollars. Can you tell me a little bit about the history of this ring?
Well, my mother had gotten the ring given to her by a person of authority who was connected to the mob families. I was told it probably was manufactured in the late 1800s, but I don't have any way of proving that.
Do you happen to have any photographs or letters that would establish a relationship between your mother and any of these organized crime figures?
Not truly.
You're the curator of the Mob Museum. I'm sure you've seen thousands of photos of Lucky Luciano. You ever see any of them with that ring or anything like that?
This particular design is not something that I'm familiar with. Considering all the information we have, unfortunately, I just don't think we can conclude that this is Lucky Luciano's ring.
Okay. It's just a story.
It's a great story.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan.
You have to have some kind of documentation to authenticate it. I mean, there's just no reason for us to think that this ring had any association to Lucky Luciano.
I think the piece is real.
At this point, I'd keep on doing some research. Maybe you can find a picture. Maybe you can find some evidence. But for now, there's nothing I can do. Okay, have a good one, man.
Thanks. I think that if I do a little more research, I'm actually going to prove the piece's authenticity, and I think I'm going to be able to get some real money for it eventually.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
What do we have here?
I have the original jail cell keys to Al Capone's cell.
At Alcatraz?
No, Cook County Jail.
All right. You should have brought him in like a birthday cake or something like that.
There was quite a few stories about Al Capone being housed there, being the mob boss of Chicago. I'd like to get anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. Not much less than that.
I got to admit, these looks like some really difficult locks to pick.
Yeah, you can't do it. Can't do it.
Which key went to his cell?
This is the main jailhouse key. There were two outer doors that this would open up, and then you went into the cell with the big door.
And where did you get him?
I had worked with an officer who was retiring. Al Capone was housed in the Cook County Jail, and he was Al Capone's personal jail guard. And he was there only for a few weeks because then he went to trial and then moved on to Atlanta Federal State Penitentiary.
Okay.
Back in the late 20s and the 30s, Al Capone ran Chicago.
Yeah, the only thing they could get him on was income tax evasion. And he killed a lot of people. But the fact was, he was Al Capone. No witness would come forward to convict him or anything like that. You wouldn't make it home that night. Al Capone was straight up nuts. But for some reason, people like him. And artifacts connected to him can be worth a lot of money. And how much did you want for him?
You know, I have like $1,500 in my mind.
They're really interesting. So you don't have any actual paperwork proving they're his keys?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I truly believe this person. He showed me where the cell was, but I have no...
Okay. If there's a way to prove that they were to his cell, we have no problem. If we can't, we're like 15 bucks a piece, so.
Nah, it's not gonna happen.
When we sell stuff, we have to certify what it is. I agree with you, these are probably from his cell, but we can't prove it. So we just can't take them, I'm sorry.
Thanks for coming in, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I was a little disappointed, but I do understand, you know, they have to be authenticated with paperwork. So I'm a little down on it.
Can I help you?
We can. Got a pistol in this 60mm movie that was shot in a pretty notorious speakeasy back in the 20s and 30s. The Capone mob hung out there, and in that movie here may be Babyface Nelson and Al Capone's girlfriend.
That's really, really cool.
My great-aunt's basement was a speakeasy, and the video is of a party. The gun was found behind a booth. I would like to get around $3,000 based on that the Capone mob frequented the establishment.
So where was the speakeasy at?
It was in Chicago.
All right. The federal government actually thought about taking over Chicago because basically the entire city was ran by the mob. And the speakeasies immediately happened after Prohibition.
Why do they call them speakeasies?
Because basically, when you spoke to someone else about it, you spoke softly or spoke easy because it was illegal, you know? They always had code words that would let you in the front of the place. A lot of these places had gambling, ladies of the evening. Sounds like a fun place, huh?
Let's go.
When Prohibition started in 1920, alcohol was being sold all over Chicago by different organized crime gangs. This could be a really cool look into Prohibition-era Chicago. So what's on the VHS?
The VHS is actually just a copy of this 60mm movie.
Okay. I'm really intrigued to see what's on this tape.
You're gonna need a VHS player, Rick.
This is a pawn shop. I think we have one in the back. I'll be right back.
I'll be here.
I've been telling Rick to get rid of that old TV VHS for years now. But I guess you never know what's gonna come in handy at the pawn shop.
Look at that. Still works. Here we go. AGFA 1938. And obviously it's silent. Do you know where Babyface Nelson or any of those faces are on this tape?
I have no idea what frame they would be on, what part of the movie. And I don't know what these people look like.
Rick, be kind, rewind.
It's been a long time since I heard that. All right, first off, the gun. Well, you have an Otis Smith revolver. They stopped making guns right around 1880, I think-ish. There is a pistol that he makes that is worth a lot of money, but that's basically just a curiosity because it was all brass. This is not that one, and it's in really bad shape. The other problem with your film, Babyface Nelson is not on it. Babyface died in 1934, and right at the beginning of the film, It says 1938. It's interesting, but there's tons of stock footage like this already out there. Yeah, so unfortunately, I'm not even gonna make you an offer. You really don't have anything marketable here.
So you won't offer anything on it?
I was hoping there was something on the movie, but there's just not.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in, though.
Sure. Have a good one.
John, give him his tape back and put the TV away.
I'm not sure whether the movie was taken or whether it was just developed in 1938. Since we weren't able to make a deal, I'll return it to my safe and give it to my son when the time comes.
The guys called me up and asked me to meet them here at Celebrity Cars for some sort of surprise. I don't know what I'm walking into, but these people have some of the most unique and cool cars in all of Vegas.
I really like all these cars, Rick.
So I grabbed my car expert, James, and we're gonna go and check it out. Whoa. Now this is a car, 1928 Cadillac V8. This is what a car should be. This was a car that was designed impressive and massive and create a statement cruising down the road.
It's too old.
Dude, it is so gangster though. I mean, look at that hood ornament.
I have to admit, it does say gangster.
Hey, what's up?
It's actually Al Capone's car.
This was actually Al Capone's car.
We have extensive paperwork to show where this car came from and all the history on it.
Al Capone was one of the most famous gangsters in the 30s. He ran Chicago and he controlled the judges, he controlled the cops.
Hey, you're talking about Al Capone and everything. I need you to tell me about this
Hold on
show.
a second, dude. I mean, appreciate it for a moment. We'll look at that in a minute. Just appreciate this car, okay? I mean, this is art.
Sometimes my dad gets distracted by the sound of his own voice.
This is the way metal should be laid out on a car. I mean, look how big those tires are.
And you just kind of got to wait it out.
That's like an inch thick glass. That's all they had for bulletproofing back then. They don't make stuff like this anymore. How much you want for it?
$1 million.
So where's the car we came to look at?
A guy brought in some shell casings that he says were at the scene of John Dillinger's last crime. There's no way to tell if they're legit just by looking at them, so I called in Jonathan to help me out with this. This is the shell casings I was telling you about. 245s at 38 and some random rifle casing from Dillinger's last heist that went really, really bad.
It did go bad, for some. I'm the executive director at the Mob Museum, which is the National Museum of Organized Crime and Law Enforcement. We specialize in artifacts, history, and stories of organized crime in the United States. So this is a great story. So the Merchants National Bank robbery, South Bend, Dillinger's last robbery before he was killed. Dillinger at the time, public enemy #1. I mean, this guy was as big as they come in terms of outlaws and real, this is real life Hollywood stuff. I mean, this is a guy who was in jail, busted out of jail twice. I mean, they knocked off banks between 1933 and 1934. Dozen-plus banks were robbed, robbed police stations to take guns and ammunition. I mean, it's amazing.
I guess that's where you would go.
Go where they keep the guns. But this was an amazing time period, 1933, 1934. I mean, this was, the Depression. People are somewhat sympathetic to the bank robbers. I mean, banks are not popular at that point in time. And the bank robbers had a real advantage, too, in terms of firepower. the speed of their cars. You know, they would go into these small towns and they'd do a job, and the police there would be no match for them. And in fact, it was this type of activity that really led to the FBI gaining all the powers that they did, because it was the only way to pursue these guys across state lines. John Dillinger was an outlaw. His claim to fame, so to speak, was as public enemy #1. By some accounts, John Dillinger was a little bit of a Robin Hood type of figure. So Rick, what are your concerns about these cases?
Well, my concerns is we have 4 shell cases in a baggie and a newspaper article that's 57 years after the fact. So are these the shells or not?
Well, so the 245s, those could make sense. I mean, they could be either for a revolver or a Thompson submachine gun. They'd use weapons where they could penetrate vests. I mean, that was one of the things that was very important to them. This one looks like it could be a .35 caliber rifle cartridge, okay, which one of the gang members, Homer Van Meter, was reported to have used that type of rifle. Okay. And from what we know about that bank robbery, might have been stationed outside with that rifle. So that could also make sense.
Okay, so is it real?
What we could do is we could take a look at the casings and the markings on the casings and see if we can gather any information that might give an indication of what time period they're from. Be able to get back to you with some more information about them.
Okay, well, is that all right with you?
Sure.
Okay, I gotta get to work.
Great.
And give me a call, and I'll call him, and we'll get everything figured out.
Sounds good.
Great. Thanks a lot, man. Sometimes when you're dealing with something as rare and unique as this, you just need more time. But if they are from John Dillinger's last robbery, I want them. So now I'm gonna sit here with my fingers crossed while Jonathan tries to figure this out.
Here's what we know. So let's start with the .35 caliber.
Okay.
It's an old case. Certainly has the appearance of being an old case. You can see on the underside, if you were to turn it over, it says REM UMC. That reflects back in 1912, Remington and Union Metallic Cartridge Company merged, and you had that head stamp from 1912 up until 1960. The other casings do not have quite the same aged appearance to them when you take a look at it. They are old. There's no question about that. You know, based on the stamp, said Western 45 Auto, is an old stamp. That one's you know, a little bit troubling. If you take a closer look at the underside, you'll see this red primer sealant. The red primer sealant and the nickel plating would typically be from a more recent shell. The bottom line with this, the newspaper article, the markings on the casings, it's a wonderful story. There's nothing about the characteristics of these cases that we've been able to determine that would indicate that they come from that crime scene.
So what you're saying is there's no proving or disproving this?
No.
All right, thanks, Jonathan.
You got it.
Thanks.
So even if those casings were used by the Dillinger gang, there's nothing to be extracted off of those casings. You can't pull fingerprints or DNA. It's a wonderful story, but there's just no way to establish fact.
Yeah, the reason I wanted Jonathan to look at him is to figure out some way we could prove it.
Sure.
This is the hard thing in the world. When you have just one piece of paperwork that's 50-some years after the fact, it's generally not enough. You know, they very well could be. They really could. But the problem is I can't put them in my showcase and put a price tag on them and say most likely from.
Thanks very much. You too. I know Bob Ehlers, my son's great-grandfather, was at the scene. I know he collected those bullets. I know we've had them in the family since. That is the authenticity factor for me.